This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, check out InsideTheBirds.com for more on the Philadelphia Eagles. Andrew DiCecco going to join us here in just a second. Football at 4 is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Joining me now to talk a little NFL draft. We are officially 3 weeks away from the NFL draft, and Andrew DiCecco is here from InsideTheBirds.com, and he joins me now. Talk a little draft with this team as the Eagles now 3 weeks out. Andrew, what's going on, my man?
3 weeks or 2 weeks?
Well, what's today? Today's the 11th. My bad. You are correct. It is 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out. Let's start over. 2 weeks out, Andrew. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you? I mean, the time is flying, but I'm aware that there's 2 weeks before because I'm cramming in as many prospect interviews as I can for the Draft Range podcast on Inside the Birds.
Yeah, he's been talking to a lot of these draft prospective players, and you can check out all those interviews over on InsideTheBirds.com. He does a great job with that every year. A lot of our listeners can't wait to hear Andrew's draft coverage, and, of course, we have it for you here on Football at 4. Let's get into it a little bit here. There's a lot, a couple things that I find interesting. Right now, if I were to say take out everything, what at 22 do you think will be the best player available? In your mind, 2 weeks out, best player available, who would it be?
Cooper DeJean or Nate Wiggins?
All right. Both those guys I like a lot. Cooper is a kind of a Swiss Army knife all over the place. Also does special teams, coming off of an injury. Iowa, very good defense. And Nate Wiggins, he's been in a lot of people's mock drafts here. Give us a little, thought about how those guys might fit in to the 2024 Eagles. Are those guys that if they were on the board and Philadelphia ended up with either one of them would play a lot right away?
Well, I mentioned this on the Fanatic last night that I believe that Cooper DeJean is the quintessential Vic Fangio defensive back and that he can be a safety. That's kind of how I envision him, at least translating to the NFL. Be the quarterback of the back end, see everything, be deceptive in how he's able to play a quarterback. He's really proficient in coming up with turnovers. I think he would pair really well with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who also has a nose for the football. He's also a very high IQ player and a good tackler. So I think his skill set really translates to that. And when you look at what Vic Fangio looks for in a safety, there's quite a bit of demands that are placed on that position, and he's able to pretty much check off all those boxes. Nate Wiggins is a wiry build, but he's a fluid mover. He has a really good long speed, good ball production. He's tough and competitive. You just worry about the size, the slight build. I think he's only 175 at 6'1", so he's rail thin, and you worry about how is he going to contend with some of the A.J. Brown body types out there that he's going to have to go up against.
All right, so those are two guys that we've heard a lot about in the secondary. So my next question would be, what position you could literally make a case, Andrew, that other than quarterback, where they signed or they traded for Kenny Pickett, they brought in Will Grier, they still have 4 quarterbacks on the team, that might be the only position that they don't need to draft 2 weeks from now. But right now, every single spot on this field other than quarterback, probably you can make a strong argument, needs something, right? Needs a depth piece or a starting spot. But which position would you say, take everything else out of it, this is what their biggest need is on draft day?
Sure, that's fair to say, Mike. And I would say the Eagles have done a fairly good job at draft-proofing their roster, assuring that they don't have to put themselves in a bind where they feel compelled to reach at a position of need. Now, the one position that is glaring that they really haven't touched at all in free agency is cornerback, and that, to me, remains the biggest need. And I know we're going to look at the Keely Ringos and the Isaiah Rodgers, who I believe that there's unfairly been some lofty expectations placed on him. He still has yet to be reinstated, by the way. And the Rickses and the Jobs, and I like those guys. But you don't just want to go into the offseason banking on their development. You also, if you have the chance to add a high-caliber athlete among the best in the draft, you take that opportunity every time. And at 22, they're going to have a chance to add a Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins. If they trade down, they can get a Kool-Aid McKinstry. There's Max Melton at the top of the second. Kamari Lassiter in the second round. Kalen Carson from Wake Forest. There's an opportunity to really add a bona fide building block, and that's what they need to do.
All right, so now we'll go to another question here as we get closer to this draft. That's the spot we think we need. There's one area on this team, right? One spot that I think has a legitimate opening, and that's right guard, right? Is that 22 a good spot to think about possibly finding someone to fill that vacancy?
Well, I think you need to assess what player is there. Now, if they're strictly a right tackle, like a Tyler Guyton, I don't believe that he has the skill set to translate inside at guard for a year or two or however long it is until Lane Johnson decides to call it a career. And Amarius Mims from Georgia, he's only played 810 snaps in his career, 8 starts. He's immensely raw, and he doesn't project to be a guard either. Now, there's a guy named Graham Barton from Duke who can play right tackle, he can play center, he can play guard. He's quick, he's aggressive, he's fluid. He's a quintessential Jeff Stoutland offensive lineman and a do-it-all type of player. He would make a lot of sense there. Troy Falatanu from Washington is my favorite offensive lineman in this entire draft, Mike, but I don't think that he's going to be available at 22. Now, if he is, not only do you have a right guard, you have a future right tackle. He doesn't have the length. He's 6'4", 315, but he does have relatively longer arms despite his build, and I think that he's the total package. So I don't know that he'll be there, but also I want to mention J.C. Latham from Alabama. He's 6'5", but he weighs he weighs, I think, like 350 or 360 at least, and that's pretty heavy for a tackle. He has a skill set to swing inside and play guard. I believe he has played right guard. So that's a player there. You look at the Alabama pedigree, that would make a lot of sense. I don't believe that would be a reach. That's a player that should fall right within that range.
Yeah, offensive line seems to be a spot that the Eagles always tend to look at, but I don't know about you, Andrew, but I'm starting to feel that that's the way they might go. And you've heard some stuff about them wanting to possibly look at guys who can do what you just said, be maybe a guard at first and then swing out to play right tackle once Lane Johnson is done, something like that. So versatility on the offensive line could be something that has, extra value for them at 22.
That's the only way that I would see it. It's the only way that would make sense. Otherwise, you're getting essentially a redshirt player. Now, if you take a right tackle or player who can fill that void, Lane Johnson has proven that he's going to miss a game or two a season, so it's not like he would totally be redshirting, but I think you really want to find, ideally, a player that has that guard versatility that can ultimately be that tackle of the future. So that's the only one that would make sense for me. I don't know that you strictly take a guard at 22, not unless they're really special, and the special players at that position aren't typically going to be available at 22.
Yeah.
A guy like Graham Barton from Duke who can play 3 different positions for you on that line,
right,
is awfully enticing in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the thing is, and we've seen the Eagles do this. Landon Dickerson was a guy they thought was going to be a center, but he could play multiple spots. He ends up going to left guard, and now he's kind of penciled himself in for a long time at left guard. They drafted Cam Jurgens because they thought he would be the heir apparent. Well, last year he was able to give them a season of right guard. That's where I think, if you're a player that only plays a tackle position, that's why I saw Mel Kiper's mock draft yesterday. He had the tackle from Houston, and I said, I don't know that he would be a guy that plays any guard, right?
No, I don't think so. He's a really big guy, surprisingly nimble for as big as he is, but I just don't see him being able to pull that off. Right. He's a second-round player, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, he had him at 50, I think, maybe 53. One of those. Actually, he had him at 50. 53, he had the receiver Polk from Washington.
Polk's a good player. I like him. There's other players that I like more now. Roman Wilson from Michigan, Ricky Pearsall from Florida might be the best route runner in this entire class. He's strictly a slot, but can give you that vertical element from there. Malachi Corley is someone who is more built like a Deebo Samuel. They call him the Yak King. He's really good in space, extremely explosive on the move, but there are some concerns about his route running. He doesn't run a very versatile route tree, so you worry about how that might translate at the pro level, but really dynamic talent. When you look at Kellen Moore, Mike, he's a coach that historically likes to get guys in space and take advantage of their athletic traits. So that's someone that maybe warrants some consideration there as well.
I love it. Talking draft, Andrew DiCecco from Inside the Birds, InsideTheBirds.com. The draft 2 weeks will be live at Ocean Casino Resort at Top Golf for our draft party, giving away that trip to Baltimore. And by the way, congratulations to our latest qualifiers. That is Bob in Mays Landing, Luke in Galloway. You joined Jim in Ocean City and Justin in Galloway, who qualified earlier today. We'll see all our qualifiers there with a chance. And on draft day, we'll be there. Happy hour prices all day. So we're going to be looking at a lot of draft stuff. Let's take a look at the defensive side. You talked about the corner, Dijon, a guy who plays all over the place, Wiggins, who's a corner. Any edge rushers at 22 to kind of keep an eye on as this thing keeps paring down, getting closer?
Mayatu Latu from UCLA is a player that if he's there, you would think the Eagles would pounce. I don't envision him.
Injury issues, though, right?
I think. Yeah, there's injury issue, but he hasn't missed a game in 2 seasons. I just want to make that clear because there's a lot of folks that have him just sort of slighting his productivity and how he's going to translate to the pro level. He's the best pure pass rusher in this draft class, in my opinion, at least. Chop Robinson might be there at 22, but he is more of a project player, an explosive athlete, a tremendously athletic player at that position, probably the most athletic player at that position, but only 11.5 sacks in his college career. But if he comes to Philadelphia, he would have the luxury of learning behind some of the other pass rushers that they have there and be more of a situational player and then be able to ultimately become a prominent player in the future because just Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith will be under contract at least next season.
All right, so tonight I will be doing a radio hit where I will be making the Eagles pick at 22 in a mock draft. And some of the guys that I like are already off the board here. So I'm a little like, all right, which way do I go?
Who's around?
So 21 was Jared Verse. Talise Fuanga is at 20. Jazon Newton at 19. Byron Murphy at 18. Brian Thomas Jr. at 17. Quinyon Mitchell at 15. Dallas Turner at 14. Latham at 13. So Michael Penix Jr. at 12, Chop Robinson 11, Brock Bowers at 10. So I don't know. At 22, I skipped right over. 16 was, I think we talked about him last week, and of course I butchered his name, was Troy Futanu, the offensive lineman from Washington. That's who I actually would like at 22. You said last he probably won't be there, and in this draft, he is off the board. So I gave you a bunch of names there.
So who are some of the players you're deliberating between?
Well, Futanu would be one. I like him at that.
Of the ones that are available.
Right. No, he would have been one, but he's gone. Wiggins is another one. I do like Wiggins a lot. I think he's a guy, man, he's got a ton of speed, man. A playmaker, seems like somebody it's funny because they have Slay and Bradbury, not really guys known for their speed all that much, especially at this stage of their career, right? So those are two guys. Wiggins would be a guy that I feel that would just be a complete different type of player than they already have. All right, so Wiggins, I think you had him in your last mock draft, right?
I did, yeah, that's correct.
All right, so that would be one. Tyler Guyton is a guy, if they went offensive line, possibly. Now, Robinson would...
Only 15 starts. Only 15 starts for Tyler Guyton. He's more of he's a projection. I was a little higher on him earlier in the process, but the more as we've gotten closer to the draft and you gather more information, I don't know that I would be in favor of that pick.
Okay, so these are a couple guys I wanted to get your opinion on because McKinstry, what do you think of him?
I like Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's the total package, but he does a lot of things well, but nothing really exceptional, if that makes sense. He's a sturdy player. I don't know that he has special traits. He's a player who I think can be found later in the first round. Remember, he has the Jones fracture. 3-year starter coming from Alabama where you're facing the best of the best. You're not going to have to worry about him. I just think that there's a lot of more enticing players that are going to be available there at 22.
Okay, so the other guy is Terrion Arnold, his teammate. Now, I do not see him on this mock draft. I figured he would be gone by 22.
Oh, I would pounce on that. Terrion Arnold is my second-rated corner behind Quinyon Mitchell, and I think he has all-pro potential. That's a player who's pretty much a complete talent. I really like his game a lot.
Yeah, so I was surprised. Whoever's making these picks around the country, I was like, okay, how is Arnold not picked here? What about Fashanu from Penn State, if he's on the board? Because we always know offensive lineman. Is he a guy that you think can play guard? He's a big dude.
I think he can. He's pretty good in pass protection. Hasn't given up a sack in 3 seasons. I think he can play guard, but again, if you don't know that, you need to be able to. You have to be able to project it. And they tried to look at Tyler Steen last year. They thought he could do it, and he couldn't. You always do that if you are sure the player can. And for me, someone like a Graham Barton, J.C. Latham, those are the players that I think if you're going to make that first-round investment, you have to be sure that they can do it.
Yeah, and then I like Cooper DeJean is another guy. I mean, he's not on this board. Do you think he would be there at 22?
Well, he had a really good pro day on Monday at Iowa's pro day. He ran a 4.45, I believe, had a 38.5-inch vertical, looked totally healthy. I think he's a top 20 player, so if the Eagles really like him, they may have to trade up a couple picks to get him. Again, you never want to speak in absolutes with the draft, Mike, as you well know.
Yeah.
But he's someone that is going to really – his skill set's going to gravitate towards a number of different teams in that area. So I can't say for sure that he'll be there at 22. Right now, I think it's improbable.
Is TJ Tampa, a corner for the listeners out there, a first-round player or a second-round player for you?
A second-round player, right around 50 to 53 is kind of where I have him slotted.
Right, exactly. So at 50, 53, I saw the Kuiper mock draft. I think had him at 35. I thought that was pretty high.
It's way too early. That's if anything, that's Max Melton territory.
Max Melton, I know you've liked him a lot, local kid. He's got him at number 40 going to Washington, which I thought, all right, man, that's great for that kid, but not good if you're an Eagles fan. But TJ Tampa's a guy that I would like if he was there around 50. That would be a spot that I thought he would be there. What about Lassiter at Georgia? Another Georgia guy is why I bring that up.
I like TJ Tampa more, 6 foot, 195, pretty physical, good ball skills. He's competitive. He's tough. I think that he's going to be that perimeter player that's going to be able to contend with all different types of receivers and not back down. That's someone that's going to be a surefire starter. Kamari Lassiter, to me, I'm not sure that he strikes me as more of a nickel player, more of an inside guy. He's a little limited athletically. He's tough. He's physical. He's willing to mix it up. But I don't know that I would feel if I'm torn between the two players, I'm going TJ Tampa.
Okay, yeah. By the way, Andrew and I can have this conversation for like 5 hours. We could just start throwing Rex Strahl's another guy. He's been in first rounds. I think he's kind of dropping a little bit. Fan. You're not a fan of him, right?
I'm not a big fan. Wiry frame. He's willing. He plays more physical than his body allows. He's banged up a lot, and he doesn't have the long speed. So you worry about him being able to contend with some of the faster receivers he's going to have to go up against.
Fletcher Cox retires. You took Jordan Davis in the first round. You took Jalen Carter in the first round. Would a tackle be something to consider if you're not thinking about signing Jordan Davis? You're going to have to start thinking about an extension for him if you want to bring him back, right?
Yeah, you do, and it's something that warrants consideration, considering you just lost your most consistent defensive player from a season ago, and now the foundational building blocks of that defense are ultimately going to be Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and it's their show now. Jalen Carter, I don't have many reservations about. I think he's shown flashes of dominance, and I think he's more equipped to be able to raise his level of play to what we saw earlier in the season, such as when he was dominating in Week 3 in Tampa Bay. Jordan Davis is where I have some questions, because you saw the dominance early in the season. Then he pretty much emptied out the tank against the Bills. You need to be able to see more sustained productivity from him. So I think you need to consider that. But Milton Williams should have a bigger role here. He's the number 3 tackle and probably the most underrated defensive player on the Eagles roster. I think that's fair to say.
No doubt.
Probably the most underrated defensive tackle in football, to be honest with you. So I think he's going to have a larger role. But I don't know, Mike, that if you're the Eagles, you can afford to fork over another premium pick at a position that you've already swung at twice when you have so many other needs. It should be addressed maybe later, and they need a veteran, at least in my opinion, but I don't know that you can invest a premium pick in a tackle.
All right, last one for Andrew DiCecco, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, all their draft coverage. Check out their YouTube channel. They have a plethora. You know the names, Ricks and Ringo and Gardner, and keep on going. Is there enough depth of guys that if they don't take a corner in the first 53 picks that they own, that they shouldn't take another corner because they don't have a third, they don't have a fourth, right? They have like 5 fifths or something. But
no, they have a fourth. They have one.
Oh, they got the fourth for
120.
Pickett. They got the fourth for Pickett. Right. They flip flopped. But would you say there's enough talent and depth that you would want to see them take another corner, or is there enough talent and depth in that room over the last couple of years? A lot of young players that they don't need to take a guy in the on the third day.
I still think you need to add another young player there. You have to factor in that you have 2 older corners, and you got to start rebuilding that position and getting it ready for the future. If you're looking at it in terms of day 3, there's a player like Jerrion Jones, a 6', 190 corner from Florida State, visited the Eagles this pre-draft cycle. He's more of a slot defender, can play outside as well. You need that versatility, especially I project him more as a slot player. Avonte Maddox is not a slam dunk to stay healthy, and we all know that. And there's Tyler Hall and there's Isaiah Rodgers. It's just a lot of what ifs or potential. I think if you get a younger player there and have more of a contingency plan, a long-term vision, that's probably the best recipe for success.
By the way, real quick before we go, CJ Uzama, tight end, Jets, Bengals signed today. I guess everybody's been talking about they need another tight end. Is this a suitable backup to Dallas Goedert?
No, CJ Uzama is more of a Dan Arnold type of signing, and I think that sort of gives them some veteran insurance, but he's been banged up an awful lot, Mike, and he's 31 years old. He's a really good blocker, actually, but I think the Eagles, he'll be more in contention with Albert Okwuegbunam. I think the Eagles still need to invest, potentially in the second round, a pick in a tight end and prepare for the future. They've done that when Selleck was getting up there. They've done that when Zach Ertz was getting up there, and now Goddard turning 30 in January certainly seems like the Eagles might need to revisit that and add to that position.
Andrew DiCecco, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and at 973 ESPN and at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. All right, buddy, we will talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks.